SaaS Therapy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of SaaS Therapy, the show where we help you save your most important business relationships, your customers. My name is Todd Kirk. I'm your host. I am joined by my slightly sweaty and sometimes anxious co-host, Casey Trujillo. Casey, if some of you know, likes to work out, and he was working out this morning and forgot that we were doing this today and had to rush over. So, Casey, we are glad you're here, my friend. I was afraid you weren't going to make it.
Well, TK, you know what my favorite is? Besides the different ways you introduce me, is sometimes our guests don't know that you're introducing me first. And so when you said sweaty, Madison's eyes went.
I was wondering.
Yeah, she thought maybe I was introducing her. So, oh goodness.
Yeah, so Todd introduced our guest.
Such a great segue, right? So today we have on Madison Hall, and I'm super excited. Madison and I connected on LinkedIn a while back. She's the director of customer success at RingCentral. Works, I think, primarily in the mid-market, and we're pumped to have her on because I think she has some awesome stories from the field, and excited to learn more about her. So, Madison, tell us a little bit about yourself so that our audience can get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Todd. And Casey, I'm also a morning workout person, so I totally get it. I always like to tell my team, I'm like, I already did the hardest thing I'm going to do today. So throw at me whatever you've got, whatever you've got, because it's not going to be harder than that. So yes, as you said, my name is Madison. I'm the director of customer success at RingCentral. Recently moved into the position of mid-market and small business, where we actually have about 85% of our customers. That's about 380,000 customers who we service in those two areas. Took over a team of about 200 CSMs and digital customer success leaders. And it's been a wild journey over the last couple of years. I did actually start as an individual contributor at RingCentral as a CSM and have worked my way up. And it's been such an interesting experience to see it from all of the various levels and all of the different kind of seasons of this job, which have been kind of marred by COVID. Was a very interesting time for us. We're a telecommunications company. So very interesting time for us, and moving into more of like the long-term mature tech startup world. So kind of seeing all of those seasons of this and being able to be a leader in that has been a very interesting experience. So very excited to be on today and talk about why I love customer success so much and why I believe it has a place in every organization.
Oh my gosh. Okay, Madison, you have, so just so our audience knows, and I think they know this about Todd and I, we usually just choose a topic with our guests, and then from there we just talk. So there's nothing scripted. So when Madison said all that information, my brain's going crazy of, okay, what's my first question going to be? So Madison, since you have been at this for a little bit, there was at one point, like, you are nuts if you don't have a customer success team. They're helping with renewals. They're doing this, they're doing that. And it was like, okay, everybody get your customer success team. Let's get it going, and everybody went that way. And now it seems like it's maybe went on the opposite direction of, well, how many CSMs do we need? And let's just put one CSM over like 4 million accounts and let's just really go scale, right? So Madison, why the swing? And then is that what you're seeing? Like, give us the state of the union of customer success. There's not too many guests that we've had on that are like, okay, I oversee this many CSM, that you're in those type of discussions. So what is the state of CSMs today?
Yeah, that's a great question. Obviously, I can't speak for the entire world of CSMs. I know that there's companies who place their priority in vastly different areas, right? But I think every company is out here to make money. Last time I checked, every company is out here to make money. So when you think about kind of the defense of customer success, it can sometimes be very difficult. It is a large organization that does cost your company money in the hopes that it is saving long-term money, but it's not something that can be seen right off the bat, such as sales. So, when I think about, like, they bring in a number every single quarter and we're protecting a number. So when you really kind of look at it, I was just in QBRs last week and we talk about what we did, what we could have done better, the tactics that we used. And I happen to, thank goodness, work for a company that has been around long enough to understand that the churn and downsell of it all is just as important as the millions that are brought in through acquisition, right? Through acquisition and upsell. So I think that when I look across the market, though, and I speak to a lot of other customer success leaders, unfortunately, there was a company here in Charlotte where I lived that completely dissolved their customer success team, only to bring them back about 6 months later. So I think that, having to defend your position as a leader and your entire team, this is what keeps me up at night, right? I always tell my team, I'm like, y'all should be out there saving customers, and I should be worrying about making sure that each of you looks amazing in what you do. And our team looks like it's really bringing in the results that it needs to be bringing in. But I think that, when you're looking at a very volatile market, when you're looking at, we're always trying to cut costs, especially right now. It's, the first time I've kind of lived through being in the tech world where it's not such a given that you would have these teams, right? Like we're decreasing ops teams, decreasing professional services teams. And so when I'm out here defending my team, I have to be so specific about every dollar that's saved, that's upsold, that we keep long-term, that we sign a long-term contract on. And, that's really where all of the tactics that I use come in so that I can get down to the dollar. I used to say, like, used to go off vibes and feelings. Like when I first started, it was like, oh, our customers love us. And I would use language like that. Like literally I would go into a meeting with our chief customer officer and be like, oh, but they love us. And now I'm like, I would never, ever say that. I would say, no, they're looking at decreasing by 25% at their time of renewal, but they're going to sign for 48 months. I would say something like that instead of, speaking about kind of the vibe of what the customer thinks about us. And so working in such scale, we're looking at every million that's sold, every million that stays with us, every million that we bring back from the brink of churn or downsell. So it's a different world for sure. For sure. I think it's a lot harder today than it was 3 years ago, for sure.
That's such a good start already. There's such a great lesson in that of so many CSMs. I think this is something we talk about a lot on the show is we have so many people, so many customers, CSMs who really look at their jobs simply as a relationship manager. And so to be able to help them realize that it's not just about the vibes of how your customers feel about you, it's about whether or not they stick around, I think is an important lesson to start with. One thing, RingCentral, from a just sheer volume of customer base, is probably one of the biggest companies out there. As far as there's a very small subset of SaaS companies that can say they have 400,000 500,000 customers or whatever that number is. And when you mention you have a team in that mid-market level to say I've got 200 CSMs. If I did that math right, that means, the ratio of customer to CSM is like 1,500 accounts or something per CSM. So there's kind of two sides to this, right? You've got to be able to defend up to leadership what you're doing and making sure that you're making the case. But then you also have to make sure that large team, because that's a really large CSM team, you also have to make sure they're effectual with all of those customers. And so I'm curious in going both directions, and so I'm happy to dig in deeper with the how you talk to executives. But I'm also interested, how do you make sure that your team is also being effective when they have so much account volume they have to support?
Yeah, that's the constant struggle, right? Like is that balance of, can you actually love and, protect the care and keeping of our customers while also defending the dollars that they come with? I want to say first a shout out to, I have the greatest leadership team ever. Honestly, I have people in my scale leadership team, the tenure there is like 13 years. So they've been doing this for quite some time, and they're absolutely fantastic. So the way that we kind of break this into pieces that are digestible is that all of our customers who are under that $4,000 threshold in monthly spend, they go to our scale, what we call our success center. So this is a scale team of 150 agents who work in inbound and outbound queuing. They work on things like adoption campaigns. We use an AI tool that is ours, proprietary AI tool that gives us early warnings on churn, downsell, issues with support tickets. So we invested a lot of money, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, in building this out. It's made a massive impact on how we can show up for our customers. You can't know anything about 300,000 customers. You just can't. So without this tool, we would be absolutely lost in terms of what are we supposed to look for? How do we know if new products are sticky? How do we understand if customers are happy? What is the market trend for that vertical? So all of that is given to us by an AI tool that we use religiously. And then for our upmarket, so these are customers who spend over that threshold, we try to keep those ratios within reason. So for instance, a mid-market CSM might have 50 accounts, and then a small business CSM might have about 150 accounts. I just want to throw out one number because I'm so proud of this. We just recently moved into the upper part of small business, having named customer success managers. So our first quarter was Q4 of 2024. We decreased churn and downsell in that space by $1 million in one quarter of having CSMs on those accounts. So when I think about like, how do you defend a position of a CSM? That's it. You say, we made you $1 million. Like $1 million did not leave because we bettered this space by $1 million. And I think that was so reassuring to me because I'll be honest, it's not a given that will happen, right? Like we could do everything. We could follow the methods. I'm very structured in how we save accounts. I'm very structured in how we go after renewals. But, unless everybody's on board and unless, the stars align, we got to say that and defend that position, but you're always taking a gamble on any tactic that you do, and
Right.
I happen to work for someone who we call him a GM, but basically he's the CEO of our business unit. He is a big believer in like many tactics, move fast. And then if it doesn't work, let's try something else. And so he really put the trust in me to go out and say, I think we should have named people here because these are customers who are smaller customers, their tenure is well over 5 years. So when I'm thinking about like the value of this customer, we have already really recouped what we put into them at the beginning, right? So now we should be nurturing them and loving them and getting them to stay with us for 10, 15, 30 years. So I think when I thought about, how do you love someone and surround them with the care and support where they probably haven't had that in the past, it was like night and day. I mean, these customers became customers who are our biggest advocates. They were the ones who became our references. They were the ones who became our people who adopted new products. And that was just from a couple quarters of love, like a couple quarters of like real invested support to them. So, and that came along with a lot of other things. I like weird names for everything. So we initiated the resolution revolution, which was basically like, you're just going to solve the problem. I don't care if it's going to cost us $1,000 or $10,000, you're just going to solve the problem. And so, these like small tactics that we got off the ground very quickly, they yielded amazing results. So I think that ratios are really difficult because I work in a field that is notoriously, it's very like telecommunications we do voice over IP. It's hard to support, incredibly technical. And I joke with my team that like, if you're working for like a auxiliary app, right? Which would be so fun because like if it goes down, it's not life shattering, right?
Right.
If your phone system goes down, you're done. Like we're done. You are losing thousands of dollars. You are calling us every 3 minutes. You are, in some cases, if you're healthcare, you're putting patients at risk. So I always tell them, I'm like, we're just one moment away from having to really shift everything, jump on one problem. So that's where the trust and long-term relationship comes in because you can only come back from that if you love the customer well and you do right by them. So,
Madison, one, I want to go work for you. I mean, quarters of love. Who doesn't want to work for someone that's all about love? Seriously. So Madison, we call this SaaS therapy because we like to be really vulnerable. Like we're not like other podcasts where we just talk in platitudes and everything's just amazing and everything I touch is gold, right? Like we want to get into the nitty gritty. Mm-hmm. So when I ask you this question, it's just out of honesty and transparency. So I've been in sales my whole life. And if you're looking at the video, you can see I've been in sales for like 150 years because I'm completely bald and all this, right? I can't stand it when one of my sales team members would say, we lost that deal to pricing or we lost that deal to product. Like in my core, that could be it. But I feel like a lot of the times I just probably did a poor job of explaining the value. I didn't find what their value was. So Madison, as a CS leader, how do you transparently say we brought in this revenue, but maybe we also lost this revenue? Like, how do you balance that out So it's just not, here's all the revenue we always brought in, but you know what? We missed some things here. Like the tactics we used here, we used there. We didn't get past the first scenario of what RingCentral did, and a competitor came in and they said they do all these things, which we do, but our CS person never got past the initial value of what we do and into these other features and capabilities that we have. Like, Madison, how do you balance that when you're talking to your team, when you're talking to upper management, to say this is what we brought in, but these are some things that we're changing in our tactics because we're not getting deeper penetration? Like, how do you balance that in a transparent way? Because it is hard to do.
It is.
Because if someone said, "Hey, we lost a deal because of renewal," someone undercut us, it's a startup. Well, that could be true, but it could also be true that we didn't get to the C level to actually show what our value was, right? So how do you balance that? Give us some tips on that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that might have been what I learned the most over the last 2 years since we got out of COVID. Just for a little bit of background, when you are moving your workforce to completely remote, we had companies who had been with, y'all know, the behemoths of on-prem phone systems, right? Like they had been with them for 50 years. And they had to pivot within a week to going voice over IP so that they could have an at-home workforce, right? We made that happen for thousands and thousands of companies around the country when they did that. And in that time period, for us at supporting the product, it was tough times because we were really supporting brand new customers and we had a lot of they had a lot of needs, but for those selling the product, it was the greatest time of their lives, right? So you can imagine that we're now, most of those customers had 3-year contracts and we're now coming up against massive competition. And when I say, like, when we first started that journey, we were the only real people in the game, like in terms of voice over IP, and we still are the undisputed, we're the undisputed leader in terms of quality. But our name recognition is not the same as some of these other guys that I could drop right now that that everyone speaks about all the time, right? So we have had to, like, imagine you go from everyone wants to be with you. It's like being the cool kid. Everyone wants to be with you in high school. You're so popular, and then you go to college and no one knows who you are. That was overnight what happened to us, So I'm speaking like we got to the place where it was like, we were hearing names of competitors we had never even considered a competitor before. Like literally, you're coming up against renewals and you're like, who is that person? I didn't even know that was our competition, So that it was such a stark kind of hit in the face. And what we had to do was we had to double down in a big way on exactly what you said, Casey, which is like, what is the value of having RingCentral over one of these competitors with a higher name recognition? Like, you have a new boss who comes in, they know Zoom. They've heard this name a million times. It's synonymous with, video conferencing. And of course, he's like, why wouldn't we just go with Zoom? Lower price point, So getting with our teams and, number one, acknowledging that this is different. Like, the worst thing you can do as a leader is not take it first and say, hey, guys, this is very hard. We're all going to be faced with things we've never been faced with before. And then once we've acknowledged it, then we can start the attack plan of, okay, we got to get much deeper in terms of product value, use cases, vertical specialization. How are we going to defend the position to these verticals that can never be down? Think about your financial services, your healthcare, your insurance. These are the verticals that we have to be so specific about when we're going after those renewals to constantly reiterate that value. And then when we don't win, which does happen, I would love to say, like, no, we have 100% renewal rate. That's not true. And when we don't win, I think that the first couple of months when we were getting hit with a lot of those renewals coming at us really quickly, it can be demoralizing, right? Because it's like your team is so used to being on top, and then suddenly they are faced with challenges they've never experienced before. And so I think with each of those, you do a post-mortem. Even if it's going to take a significant amount of time, like, you think about what could have been done. And from those post-mortems came what I call like our 3 levels of save. So, from those came those tactics that we built off of, where every single time we are going to initiate 3 levels of save. You are going to bring the right people in. You are going to get the right people at the table. And then you're going to execute every single escalation needed to get the product person there, or the securities person there, or our CEO there, right? Like, you're going to do everything in your power. And to have a team come alongside you in that, I think you first have to acknowledge that like we're asking more of you than we ever did before, because no one wants to come alongside a leader who just glosses over the fact that it's harder than it was then. So acknowledge that, and then give them the actual tools to go out and save these customers, and make sure they know that like a saved customer at a lower price point is still a saved customer. We can always grow a customer, but if they leave us forever, that stinks. You know, that's just the worst case scenario. So I think kind of getting them into the mindset that we are going to face things that we've never faced before, but you're also going to learn things that you've never learned before, including but not limited to the fact that a lot of CSMs have never had to negotiate, position, you know, their whole job should be value add, but we probably were not speaking about that in the right way before this, because it was such an easy, like, yeah, you know, the value, your people can work from home. Awesome. But now it's like, no, what is the value if they're back into a shared workspace and they have a hard phone on their desk they haven't used in 15 years, which like, I get that, you know? So it's like, how do you speak about what is the future of your company going to look like with AI and with a decreased need in individual digital lines? How can we support you moving forward? And I think that RingCentral did a very good job of diversifying products. So we created our own AI product, we created our own contact center. And in that, it gave us the opportunity to offset some of that loss of our more traditional products by adding those new MPI to customers. And they've been very receptive to that. But again, we also had to acknowledge to our CSMs, you're going to have to learn 5 new products. Like, to be able to be here, to be able to be a player in this space, you have got to learn and be incredibly knowledgeable in use cases, in value, and how you're going to position this to the customer, because they're looking to us to be that knowledge source, that like consultative person who comes up and says, hey, you know, what are you thinking about with AI in the future of your business? Like, have you thought about this? And for our smaller customers, they love that. They want someone who's going to come alongside them because they don't necessarily have like robust IT teams. So it's invaluable to be able to sit down and be that trusted advisor with your customers. I think to our executive team, being transparent and then showing every dollar, right? Like, we document every single save attempt. We document every single thing that we've done with the customer, that we plan to do with the customer, and who needs to be involved. And from those, again, that's where I get all of my tactics to go after additional customers and new customers. So I think that as long as you show, if you have a gracious leadership team, as long as you show that like you are working incredibly hard for every single customer in their best interest, because sometimes I do have to say, hey, I don't think that we can be what you need anymore. You know, like, honestly, you only needed the phone and you're going to get it for $20 less somewhere else. And like, you're a tiny business. I can't tell you to stay. Like, I can't in good conscience be like, yeah, you should stay with us and pay 40% more. So, you know, in those instances, I think that I am always, you know, on the scales of wins and losses, like, we're going to lose some and we're going to gain and upsell so many others. So I'm just always thinking in that mindset of like, okay, let's do what's best always. Let's surround the customer with love. And then we also have to accept that there's going to be times where we're not going to win. So I think that you have to get your team behind wanting to be the best and wanting to evolve with you as you go through that journey of a more mature SaaS company.
And I, you know, Madison, as you say that, I hope those in our audience who are in the CS world are taking note, because there's so, you know, one of the old adages that I think we say here a lot is people don't renew because of past value. They renew because of anticipated future value that they're going to receive. Right. So, and it's not even what have you done for me lately? It's what are you going to do for me in the future? And so like your whole point of diversifying your product base and helping people see future things that they can achieve and how they can use you. That's all awesome. But there was something in there that really stuck out to me that I love, which is I've used that adage a lot to talk about renewing with a customer. But for me, the connection that I made as you were saying that is the fact that I think on top of that, there is anticipated value of the CS team, right? What is the team going to do in the future? And if you glaze over the problems and you try to just paint this where everything's hunky-dory thing, then you're also undercutting the future value of the CS team. So for me, it's not just customers renew because of anticipated future value, but the CSM team sticks around because of the potential problems they're going to solve in the future. So you have to be able to highlight the problems because the problem is the opportunity in the future. Anyway, that was my connected dot. I don't know if that was your intent there, but that was something that clicked for me. So I'm curious your thoughts there. Am I off with that, or do you think there's some truth to that?
No, I love that. I mean, who would stay with a company if you did not think that there was like a long-term vision and goal here, right? Like if you didn't think that we had their best interests at heart and that we were working towards them being able to solve these problems. I think that CSMs by nature, I like to draw this comparison and it's crazy, but my dad is a pastor and I've watched him serve people his whole life. I didn't go that way, right, in any stretch, but I think about like CSMs become CSMs because they are the service part of this is a huge part of who they are as people, right? And so if you are in a position, if you're put into a position as a CSM where you believe that you're not going to be able to do that for a customer, maybe it's because the product is not where it should be, or maybe it's because you don't feel that you can succeed because you don't have the tools or resources. You are never going to show up and work your heart out for something if you don't believe that it's, if it's possible to make a difference. So having your team come alongside you and believe that, hey, you're going to solve hundreds of problems for these customers long term and problems that make a difference in how they make money. I always tell them, I'm like, if they can't make a call, if they can't write in, if they can't, message you on social media, if they can't send you a text message, they can't make money. Like that's how they make their money. So when you think about like, there's nothing higher than getting a customer to a place of efficiency, longevity, they're doing well, you're doing well. And so if we all are kind of working towards that utopia, that feeling of like, we're going to impact a customer in a big way, I think that it just makes the days go better, even when there's really, really tough days. And like I said, like this has been a tough season. I will not sugarcoat that at all. Yesterday we did our Q2 kickoff and I had the team do a word cloud. Like they were typing in the words that they would describe Q1 as. And, as a leader, the words stung me to my core. Some of them were chaotic. We had a big, huge org reshift in Q1. So they had reason to say this, but, and we moved about 100,000 accounts to different ownership. It was really a crazy, crazy quarter. But when I saw those words, I was like, I'm thankful that they can be honest. Like I'm thankful that they can say that it was chaotic and, it was really a difficult time, but they're here because they know that like we have their best interest at heart and we're getting to a place of stability. And I firmly believe that they know that and they're trusting that. And so I told him, I was like, I'm going to ask this again next quarter and it's going to be like wonderful, best quarter of our life, like it's going to be so much better. But I definitely think, stability breeds creativity. And that's where our best work comes from. It's like when they feel that they can, offer up suggestions to customers, be consultative in nature. They understand the depths of their use case and the value that they need to get from the product. Like that's when you really see CSMs like shine. And I live for that when I'm on those calls and I'm like, oh my gosh, like look at them in there, just, like really showing a customer what we can do, which is so much fun. So I do agree that, the perceived value is very, very, very important. And it's like the CSMs are renewing with us too, because they could go somewhere else. They could be, I always tell them, I'm like, you could be a part of like a non-mission critical software. Like you really could, if this was not for you, because it's really difficult in times of outage or in times of issues, like there's a lot of other jobs where you could support something that it didn't matter as much, and maybe that would be for you. So I definitely try to be as honest as possible in the interview process. I'm like, no, guys, listen, like if your contact center goes down, you are going to hear about it. Like you are going to be, I call them the Madison apology tours, where I have to apologize to thousands of customers, anytime something happens. I love them. These are my favorite calls. But I'm like, and you'll be doing that too. Like that, you will have to atone for the sins of a company that maybe you had nothing to do with it. So definitely it's such a tough job. And I think that's what makes me like love the fact that there's 200 people who want to do this, like who voluntarily sign up to come in every day and do this job, because like it's very, very tough and ultimately rewarding as well. But I love that comparison. I do think that there's a lot of, on both sides, us making promises and believing in a future that's beneficial to everyone involved, not just the customer, but also the CSMs who learn and grow, learn new products. They're never going to work somewhere harder than this, I don't think. So I feel that like they're being crafted into CSMs who can really handle anything, which I love that.
So Madison, as we have thought leaders like yourself that are in this position, that is a reoccurring theme that the troops, the customer success managers out in the field, that they're feeling like there's always change, there's always something new for them to learn. What is, with all the KPIs that I have, which one should I focus on, and QBRs and CSAT scores and all these things, right? So Madison, there's two things though, as we've heard from leaders, Todd and I, is there's two skills that they believe the modern CS person needs to learn. Number one is be better at negotiations, have those seller skills, basically ask more open-ended questions, sit there and listen, right? Dive deeper. And then the second one is you better know our product inside and out and be able to give different use cases. So you can say, hey, I have another customer that's doing this, and let me walk you through what that might look like. Madison, how do you find time to teach those two things? How do you find time to teach different product use cases, teach these sales skills with everything else that they got going on, and just working with their customers, and hey, this, there was an outage here and we got to go hurry and get this fixed, or this customer is really depending upon this new feature coming in and it didn't go well. How do you fit it in so that the CS people are actually developing these skills to become better at their jobs? Like, any best practices there?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I have the privilege of working for a pretty large company. So we do have an amazing enablement team on both the sales side and the CS side. We actually bring them together. So each team has a sales enablement leader and a CSM enablement leader. And we bring them together to really help craft how we are going to shape CSMs to be able to go out and do all of those, all the various tasks. For me, I kind of think of everything in a big circle. So I'm always about like, we learn, we reinforce, we learn, we reinforce, right? So each week we position a product spotlight. So each week we have a product that we are honing in on. So I do my team calls on Mondays. Everyone has tried to take these away from me. They're like, you don't have time to be doing that. I'm like, no, it's the most important time of my week, is to like, we set the tone. What are we going to focus on? We focus on 3 areas. So one is products, or our product spotlight. Second is operational excellence. So we focus on honing in on our forecasting, or honing in on our task tracking and creation. And then the third one is going to be something that's a little bit more fun on the development side. So it could be, holding a perfect call, or getting your QBRs right every time, that type of thing. So, but on the product side, I would say that, you introduce a product, you do a short training, something that's digestible. And then for the rest of the week, we hold trainings, but these trainings are use case specific and demo specific. So like, we will position various use cases in our verticals. Financial services. How does someone in healthcare use RingSense? Why would someone in retail want to use this product, right? So we're introducing those on calls and one-on-ones. Then on Thursdays, we do a lunch and learn, and that's when we do a demo of the product. They see it. This isn't the first time they've seen it, but it's just to be able for them to ask questions about use cases or about their specific customers. And then on their one-on-ones, they have to bring their customers that they believe would benefit from this product, whether it be customers who currently use the product and they want to get a deeper adoption rate, or customers who do not use the product and they want to position it to them. We are very lucky. We had a product come out about 1.5 years ago called RingSense, and it's a coaching product. So basically it uses AI, takes on all your information, and then gives you what keywords were said, what the customer sentiment was, all of those things. And so our leaders use this to identify if the CSM is taking the product spotlight and actually speaking to their customers about it. So they go and check it in their one-on-ones. They're saying, hey, I actually think this was a great opportunity for you to bring up AIR and you didn't bring it up. So maybe you can go back to that customer and like say, I think you need an AI receptionist. Have you thought about this? And so we have been working tirelessly to just like get that circle down. And we do that circle every single week. There are no surprises about what's expected of you, what you need to know, what level of knowledge you're supposed to have. I would expect every CSM to get into calls and be empathetically listening for any areas where they could introduce a product that would help a customer, right? And if they miss them, then RingSense will pick that up and we coach. And then it's just a big circle over and over again of all of those things. So that's been very, very helpful for us, because I think that, number one, I never want to hear that a CSM is unsure of what the priorities are. There are only 3 priorities every week. Like, these are them. I put them in order for you. Like, you've got to get these done. And then I also don't want to feel that a CSM would miss an opportunity to help a customer if they brought up something specifically that could impact them and their business. So I think that kind of you have to have a methodology behind everything. You can never go into anything expecting that a team, especially, I think of this as like a big ship, to move this ship takes a very long time. Like, it's a constant, we turn like this much every quarter, right? Until we finally get around in a circle. But if you're doubling down on everything, your leaders are on the same vision and path that you are. They understand the importance. At the end of the day, I always say this as I wrap up every call, we have a saying around here, and it's extreme ownership of every customer outcome. That's all I care about. Like, all of these things are in service to that, period, end of story. So if you are questioning, if you're thinking, should I take time to do this? If you say, is this exhibiting extreme ownership of every customer outcome? That should probably be what you're doing first, right? Like, that email can wait. Let's do this so that we can get this customer an outcome that they're going to appreciate. And so I definitely see a lot of CSM teams that why, the vision behind why we are doing this is not clearly articulated. And so CSMs do feel a little bit just out at sea, right? Like, they do feel like they're not necessarily working towards a goal, and they don't necessarily know what they should be prioritizing. But I think that a little tweak of just like setting those priorities at the beginning of your week, and then having each subsequent training or lunch and learn or, opportunity to sit with product should be in the focus of what you introduced at the beginning of the week. And then you should cycle through those over and over again until you feel that the CSM team knows the product incredibly well. They understand what your level of operational excellence looks like, how we keep up with KPIs and track what we're doing. And then you start it all over, because they'll forget. So you have to do it all over again, which is just the nature of the game. So, and you get new CSMs, you get new customers, and there's, a whole world of all kinds of things that you're trying to make sure that everyone knows kind of what your expectation is. But I do think that happiness for CSMs comes from understanding how to perform, because they always want to perform to the highest level. So, if they know it, they know what I expect, they'll outperform that, because like they want to do amazing work. They want to help our customers. So I think that just making sure that they understand clearly, because of, we're very defined in how we do this. And then I report all of that back to our executives, right? So that methodology, they know exactly what we're doing. They participate as well. So a lot of our leaders will also participate in being a part of those calls or attending the lunch and learns and asking Q&A. We do a lot of role play with an AI tool called Yodely. All of that is in service of the greater good of making sure that we can show up for our customers and give them the best support and consultative approach that we can give.
Madison, I know you didn't go to become a pastor or preacher like your dad, but I just want to say amen to all that. So good.
No one wants to be a pastor or preacher. Believe me, this is much better suited for me. I promise.
Madison, you sound like a change management focused individual, which is awesome. That's where all my change management alarm bells are going off, because that's my background comes more on helping people move the big ship. And so so often people miss all these little things that you're talking about. So for those of you, if you didn't catch it, my quick summary that I love here is: 1, multiple ways to engage your people and teach them. Large band practice, you get everybody together and you do a formal training. Then you have informal small trainings that are maybe optional, but you encourage that and make them valuable so people come. You're encouraging them to train and learn and use resources in their own time and when they're meeting with you one-on-one. And then you're reinforcing that over and over and over again, and not expecting someone to just get it overnight. Because they're going to forget, or they're going to fail to remember, or whatever that might be. So so many good things there. As a follow-up question, though, the one thing that I was curious about as you were talking about that is, obviously you mentioned the fact that you want to take extreme ownership of the customer outcome and make sure that they get the value that they need to receive. if you were to kind of put in an ideal state of how you wish your CSM spent their time, how would you break that down? Because a lot of times we talked about this already. They're maybe spending a lot of times fighting fires or just answering low level support questions or doing like repeated low level training for their customer over and over again. Like in an ideal world, how would you want your CSM spending their time on a day-to-day basis?
I think about this all the time because I think about how I spend my time, which is a lot of escalation, a lot of negotiations up for, to reduce churn. That's how I spend a lot of my time. And obviously a lot of meetings about forecast. But when I think about all of that, there's a structure that I try to create, like the triangle, so that the CSMs literally think about none of this, and their main focus, goal, job should be the care and keeping of our customers. And in the day to day, I would hope that they're spending at least 60% of their time in consultative conversations with our customers. So whether that's a cadence call, whether that's a customer who says they want to know more about something, whether that's follow up from a webinar that a customer attended, it's a great opportunity to keep the door open. You attended this great webinar about what's new in our product. Let's talk about some of the things that are going to directly impact you. So I want those deep conversations, not a scheduled cadence call to say like, hey, how are you doing? How's everything? Right? Like nothing infuriates me more than a scheduled cadence call with absolutely no meaning. So, and I'll pop in on some of these, or I listen to some of these on RingSense, and I'm like, guys, absolutely not. Like, what a waste of time for everybody involved. We are not a product that people necessarily want to talk about. Like your phone works, your video works, your contact center is working, and everything's great. Your omnichannel is doing great. Wonderful. We're not necessarily like, you don't want to sit around and talk about your telephony platform. So I think that the way that I would ask the CSMs to engage our customers is that they don't, you said this perfectly, Todd, like they don't necessarily care if everything is working today. We should really be focused on their long-term vision. So much is changing in terms of, especially think about a contact center. I mean, you have
Right.
AI receptionists, you have agent assists, you have sentiment analysis that we've never had before, playback analysis we've never had before. And the likelihood that your customer is looking to you as the source of, consultation and truth here is pretty high. So I would be asking them to have those conversations of like, hey, you have 1,000-person contact center. Where do you see this in 8 months, 10 months, 12 months? Are you trying to decrease your work? Are you trying to increase the amount of, consultative conversations you're having with your customers? How can we increase sales or conversion rates from those conversations? These tools can help us do that. If we're not having those conversations, then I feel like we're marching towards a churn, right? Like you're not providing any value at all whatsoever to your customers. So I would ask that they be spending definitely the majority of their time speaking to our customers, either in the field, doing EBRs, which I've got a lot of thoughts on that I'll save for another podcast, but in the field doing EBRs, or, speaking to them in more informal conversations. I do think that we fall into the trap so often with CSM teams where we're like, we expect you to have 5 EBRs and 15 cadence calls every month. I don't believe in any of that. Like legitimately, like the source of truth of how your customers are feeling is their renewal rate and also the amount of products that they adopt with you, their adoption rate. Like could care less if you talk to them once or 55 times. Like it will be like your quality of conversation is so much more important to me than the number of conversations that you're having. So I don't do any of that. Like I don't mandate number of calls. I don't do any of that. And there's probably a lot of people out there that have a lot of thoughts on that. But the other portion I would say is there's a lot of admin work that goes into what we do, of course. So part of that revolution was these were customers who were historically pretty underserved in terms of maybe they did not have a named CSM, or they were part of another team that was not super successful. So we need them to get fast resolutions to their problems. You need a number changed out. You want to decrease a line. We've taken some positions that have caused a lot of angst with our customers, and we're trying to reverse pretty much a good bit of that. So I would also like for them to spend about 15% of their time just solving those problems, right? Like quick and easy wins that build that trust so that we can get to those long-term conversations. These don't happen over cadence calls. These are quick, hey, we're going to message each other back and forth, get this done. we build off that. That's momentum that we can then build off of to have those long-term conversations about how they're going to grow with us. And then the rest of the time they do spend in training, some type of collaborative. So they'll do a lot of role play with each other, a lot of objection handling training, which we've been really doubling down on recently. And then obviously competitive battle card training and new product training that we do a lot of. So I like for them, I don't differentiate any of my teams. So I have teams all over the world, but we all do everything together. So there's no differentiation between a digital team or a named CSM team. And I think this has led to like the knowledge share that happens between these teams is crazy because obviously scale, the customers are calling in for a transaction, but my named team has to get better at those transactions to deliver those resolutions quickly. So, they're exchanging so much information back and forth on how to do things. What should we position to a customer if they're calling in about this one issue? And I think that they've both learned a lot from each other. And we're new to this. We've only been together for about 3 quarters now. So that learning has come from like making sure that everyone is getting trained on the same thing. There's no, no one should be learning something that someone else isn't. So that's how I would like for them to spend their time. I think they probably spend too much time on email, right? Me too. And too much time on escalations. But I also know that we're in a, when I think about the line here, we just did account transitions. And I tell them all the time, like when you get an account, you better work fast and furious to get everything resolved, because then that's when we go on the downward slope and that relationship builds, right? That long-term, you're going to be with them for 5 years, hopefully. So, we want to get it fixed, and then we can talk to them about, you gotta like shore up the wound first before you can talk about like what we're going to do when we're going to go for a run. Right. So very important to like let's make the bleeding stop. And then we can talk about like, your AI strategy or whatever, because they don't want to hear that right now. So we're definitely in that season right now. And so we're solving a lot of problems, but I know that from those problems comes long-term relationships. So that's how I would love for them to spend their time.
Awesome. So great. Again, we're going to have you back on a podcast to talk about what you just said about why you don't ask for number of calls. We're going to do that one for sure. Madison, I'm going to steal Todd's thunder, and I'm going to ask the last question. Okay. So in SaaS therapy, any good therapy session, for a shout out to all of our people that go to therapy, it's a wonderful thing. Your therapist at the end says, hey, we're going to work on something this week. And there's a challenge, an invitation that is given to go and work on something. So Madison, for our audience today, if you could give them one thing to work on, what would it be?
I love that. By the way, my sister's a therapist, and every conversation ends like this with her, even though she's not my therapist, but she's always, I'm like, take that hat off for just a second, be my sister. So I would say if you're a leader who's listening to this podcast, I would ask for the thing that you work on this week to clearly define the why to your team. Make sure they know that the status of your company, good, bad, or ugly. Sometimes you have to deliver some harsh truths about where you are in this journey of tech, right? But make sure they know the why, because they will align behind you, and they want to be in the know about the challenges that they're being faced with. And if you're an individual contributor, I would say that, what's good for one is good for many. Like if it is going to be something that's going to impact your life, I promise you it's going to impact the other people on your team's life. So imagine if you could save 10 minutes by doing something, creating a process, or changing something that's been like stuck in that limbo mode. That's the way that you kind of rise up, is by making yourself an indisposable portion of your team, and the rest of the team will benefit from that. So never keep something to yourself. Like always be one for all in terms of customer success.
That's it, Todd. I'm going to go work for Madison. Sorry. See you later, bro. I'm out. I'm putting in my application right now.
It's okay. I'll join you. So Madison, thank you so much for joining us today. You've been a treat. This has been an awesome conversation. If people want to get a hold of you after this, what would you say?
Yeah, you can message me on LinkedIn. I'm always open. I also love to hear about like tactics, ideas, especially in the digital space. We're a little bit newer here. So would love if people have, they have a successful tactic or a successful way that they go about the digital space. Please message me. I would love to listen and try to take some stuff back too. So,
So good. Thank you, Madison. We better let you get out of here. You've been awesome. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank y'all so much.
SaaS Therapy is brought to you by Brainstorm, the SaaS platform for SaaS adoption. Learn more at brainstorminc.com.